What if the most important Dutton you've never heard of is about to walk onto your screen, and nobody at Paramount wants you to figure it out? Taylor Sheridan spent 2 seasons of 1923 building one of the most emotionally devastating sagas in television history. He wrapped it with at least 2 unaccounted-for Dutton bloodlines, sent them into the wilderness of time, and gave us 0 answers about where they ended up. Then, less than a year later, he planted a brand new family in the exact same corner of Montana, the Madison River Valley, and told everyone it had absolutely nothing to do with the Duttons. And we're just supposed to believe that. Today we're breaking down everything we know about the Madison, how it connects to the brutal finale of 1923, and why Michelle Pfeiffer's new character might be sitting on a secret that stretches back 100 years. Stay with me, because this one goes deep. What is the Madison? Let's start with what we actually know about the show. The Madison premieres on March 14, 2026 on Paramount+. It's a Taylor Sheridan production. He wrote all 6 episodes personally, and it stars Michelle Pfeiffer as Stacy Clyburn, a wealthy New York City matriarch whose world gets torn apart by tragedy. Her husband Preston, played by Kurt Russell, appears to die in a plane crash alongside his brother Paul before or very early in the series. From everything we can see in the teaser trailer, Preston only appears in flashbacks. He and Stacy never share a scene in Montana, and she tells her therapist, played by Will Arnett, that her center, her soul, is gone. So Stacy packs up what's left of her life and brings her family to Montana's Madison River Valley. With her are 2 daughters, Abigail, a recently divorced mother of 2 played by Beau Garrett, and Paige, the more self-indulgent one whose lifestyle is funded by her investment banker husband Russell, played by Patrick J. Adams. It's a family fracturing under grief, learning to breathe again in the mountains. The Montana locals they encounter are just as interesting. Cade Harris, played by Kevin Zegers, is a neighbor who is apparently asked to look out for the Clyburn property until the family arrived. His wife Kestrel, played by Danielle Vasanova, is an indigenous woman living on a ranch nearby. And Ben Schnetzer plays Van Dovis, a salt-of-the-earth Montana rancher who rounds out the local world these New Yorkers are stepping into. 6 episodes, Sheridan's most intimate work by his own account, and already renewed for a 2nd season that finished filming before season 1 even aired. Now here's where it gets interesting. Fun fact. Before we go further, here's a behind-the-scenes detail that tells you everything about how Paramount views this show. Kurt Russell's casting was kept completely secret for months after season 1 wrapped filming in December 2024. His name wasn't announced to the public until September 2025. You don't hide a star of Kurt Russell's magnitude unless his character carries a reveal worth protecting. Both he and Pfeiffer are credited as executive producers, which is unusual for actors in a Sheridan production. These 2 aren't just showing up to collect a paycheck. They're invested in the story at a creative level. Whatever Preston Clyburn's full backstory turns out to be, Sheridan and Russell built it together. The official story, and why it doesn't add up. Here's the part that should make every Sheridan fan raise an eyebrow. The Madison was conceived, greenlit, and publicly developed as a Yellowstone spinoff. Back in May 2023, Paramount Network literally ordered it as an untitled Yellowstone spinoff. It went through years of development under that banner. In August 2024, Paramount's own co-CEO publicly called it the newest chapter of the Yellowstone universe. Matthew McConaughey was rumored to star at one point, with Kelly Riley, Cole Hauser, and Luke Grimes potentially reprising their Yellowstone roles. Then, in January 2026, weeks before the premiere, Paramount did a complete 180. They contacted media outlets and asked them to remove the word spin-off. The official Paramount Plus FAQ now states, and I'm paraphrasing, that the Madison has no connection to the Duttons or the Dutton family tree. Director Christina Alexandra Voros, who directed episodes of Yellowstone 1883 and all 6 Madison episodes, told the press that the only common ground is the landscape. But let's look at that landscape for a second. The Madison River Valley sits in southwest Montana, roughly 50 to 100 miles from the Yellowstone Ranch's Paradise Valley setting. It's also close to the ranch in Dillon, Montana, where Beth and Rip relocated after Yellowstone's series finale. Sheridan chose this specific valley out of all the dramatic locations in Montana, and we're supposed to believe geography is just geography. The man who has spent a decade building an interconnected universe of stories rooted in place and land ownership just happened to land here by accident. The same creator, the same director, the same production companies, and Danielle Vasanova, who played Atahualpa in 1923 Season 2, now plays Kestrel Harris in The Madison. Different characters, sure, but dual casting across two shows in the same universe is a breadcrumb trail, not a coincidence. Voros herself, right after the Yellowstone finale, said, and this is a real quote, "The Taylor Sheridan cinematic universe is real." Make that make sense alongside no connection. If you're enjoying the breakdown so far and you want more deep dives into the Sheridan-verse, from 1883 all the way through the Madison, subscribe right now and hit the bell. We break down every theory, every Easter egg, every loose thread. Now let's talk about the 1923 finale, because that's where the real puzzle pieces live. How 1923 ended and what it left unfinished. The Season 2 finale of 1923 was one of the most emotionally loaded hours in the entire franchise. Spencer Dutton, after fighting his way back to Montana from overseas across 2 full seasons, arrived just in time. Barely. Alexandra had been stranded in a frozen Montana wilderness after her traveling companions froze to death. Spencer got her out, but the damage was already done. Her hands and feet had to be amputated due to frostbite, and she was 6 months pregnant. Alexandra refused the surgery. She chose to spend whatever time she had left with her newborn. She gave birth to a son on March 28, 1924, and she named him John, after Spencer's murdered older brother, John Dutton I. This baby, John Dutton II, is the man who would eventually become the father of Kevin Costner's John Dutton III. The lineage we've been watching for 5 seasons of Yellowstone traces directly back to this moment. Alexandra died 3 days later. Spencer arrived just in time to spend one final night beside her. Then he and Jacob rode to Donald Whitfield's mansion, shot him dead, and burned the estate to the ground. Spencer took over the Yellowstone Ranch, and in one of the finale's most haunting moments, Elsa Dutton's voiceover told us what came next. Spencer never remarried, but he took comfort with a widow, and he made another son with her. He refused to marry her, and one day, the widow was gone. Let me repeat that again. Spencer Dutton had a second son. The show names neither the mother nor the child. We don't know when this boy was born, what he was called, or what happened to him. He just exists, somewhere out there in the Sheridan timeline, carrying Dutton blood with no story attached. And then there's a third unresolved thread. Jack Dutton's wife Elizabeth left Montana for Boston while pregnant after the siege. Jack had already been killed. Her child, Jack's child, a direct Dutton heir, has no known name, no known fate. 3 potential Dutton bloodlines heading into the gap between 1924 and the modern day. 1 accounted for, 2 completely open. The theories. How the Madison might connect. Now we get to the good stuff. The most compelling theory in the fan community right now centers on Spencer's unnamed second son. The argument goes like this. That child grew up, maybe drifted from Montana, maybe changed his circumstances entirely. His descendants could have become the Clyburn family, wealthy, East Coast, disconnected from the land that made them. The Clyburns' background in investment banking and Manhattan elite culture actually tracks with a family that left ranching behind generations ago and built wealth in a different world. And now, Stacy Clyburn, unknowingly, is being pulled back to the exact valley where her ancestor started. The idea of unconscious reclaiming is one of Sheridan's favorite themes. He's been exploring it across the entire franchise. What land means, who it belongs to, and whether blood ties people to place in ways they can't explain or escape. The Clyburns moving to Montana to heal from grief, only to discover they were always supposed to be there, would be the most Sheridan thing Sheridan has ever done. A second theory focuses not on the Clyburns themselves, but on the locals surrounding them. Cade Harris, the neighbor asked to look after the property until the family arrived, is interesting. Why him specifically? Who gave him that responsibility, and how far back does that arrangement go? In the Sheridan-verse, stewardship of land is never casual. It's generational. If Cade or Van Davis turns out to carry Dutton lineage, knowing or unknowing, the reveal would flip the entire power dynamic of the show. The newcomers wouldn't be outsiders learning from locals. They'd be heirs being guided home by family. There's also a thematic theory that doesn't require a blood connection at all. The Clyburns represent exactly the kind of wealthy outside money that John Dutton spent 5 seasons of Yellowstone fighting to keep off Montana land. For the entire franchise run, wealthy East Coast and California transplants were the antagonists. Now, Sheridan has placed us inside one of those families and asked us to love them. That narrative inversion is itself a Sheridan-verse statement, a reconsideration of the story's moral geography. And then there's Danielle Vasanova. Her character in 1923, Atahualpa, was a Comanche woman whose story ended with freedom and an uncertain future. Her character in the Madison, Kestrel Harris, is an indigenous woman living on a Montana ranch in the present day. Whether these women are literally related across generations or thematically rhyming across the franchise, the casting is not random. Sheridan doesn't do random. What the timeline tells us. The full Sheridan-verse timeline now spans from 1883 all the way to the present across 7 announced series. 1883 established the Duttons arriving in Montana. 1923 showed them defending that land through drought, depression, and war. The unproduced 1944 chapter would cover the next generation. Yellowstone brought it into the modern era. And now we have the Madison, set in the present day in the same region with a new family and an old land. The math of generations is worth noting. Spencer's unnamed second son, born sometime in the mid to late 1920s, would have had children in the 1950s, grandchildren in the 1970s or 80s, and great-grandchildren who would be adults today, exactly the age range of the Clyburn daughters, Abigail and Paige. The timeline fits. It doesn't prove anything, but it fits cleanly enough that Sheridan could confirm it retroactively without breaking a single established fact. So is this a Dutton story or not? Here's the honest answer. We don't know yet. And that might be the point. Paramount's last-minute repositioning of the Madison could be a genuine creative decision, an attempt to broaden the audience beyond Yellowstone devotees and let the show breathe on its own terms. Or it could be a misdirection, a way to let new viewers in without spoiling a reveal that won't land until season 2 or beyond. Sheridan has a long history of planting seeds across multiple seasons before paying them off. He's not the kind of storyteller who tips his hand in the first episode. What we know for certain is this: Taylor Sheridan doesn't write in a vacuum. Every show he creates is in conversation with the others. The land, the legacy, the question of who has the right to stay. Those themes don't stop at franchise boundaries. The Madison River Valley is not a random setting. The Clyburn family is not a random family. And the 1923 finale's deliberately unresolved bloodlines are not a loose end. They're an invitation. The premiere drops on March 14th, 2026. And the first question every Sheridan fan should be asking when Stacy Clyburn steps off that plane in Montana and looks out at that valley for the first time is a simple one. Has she been here before? That's everything we know and everything we suspect about the Madison and its connection to the 1923 finale. If this video helped you see the bigger picture of what Sheridan might be building, drop a like. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we'll be covering the Madison episode by episode as it drops in March. And tell me in the comments, do you think the Clyburns have Dutton blood? Or is Paramount telling the truth this time? I'll be in the comments reading every theory. See you in the next one.